Welcome to our Tidbits of History. This morning we're going to do something a little bit different. Our topic is community, civility, and compassion, and Clare Coleman, the branch manager at Central, is going to speak about the topic. Then the genealogy staff will read some past entries in the reminiscent writing contest that do reflect community, civility, and compassion. We hope these will provide inspiration for those of you who want to make entries in this year's reminiscent writing contest. Welcome, Claire.
Good morning. Morning. Everyone's awake this morning? No? Well, I can't promise that I'll wake you up, but I can promise that I will get us dialoguing, hopefully. I have 15 minutes, and then we'll go on to the next portion of this program, which is the portion that I'm the most excited about, and I have a feeling that's what you are here for, which is to hear some past readings. The Reminiscent Writing Series that Calcasieu Parish Public Library has been putting on is, I think, one of the gems of the library's programming. It's been around since 1990, and I think there may have been maybe 1 or 2 years there where we didn't have one, but it's been pretty much every year where there's been a reminiscent writing contest. That is remarkable. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this particular program was because we wanted to highlight some of the readings. I was just speaking to one of our guests here this morning. I think people know about the contest, but maybe they haven't read the entries. So we're going to highlight some of those today. This is part of a bigger series of events, though. This is part of Community Read 2012. It is a joint effort from the Calcasieu Parish Public Library and several other community partners. And I want to name those so that everybody's aware of who has helped us with this series of events. The Arts and Humanities Council of Southwest Louisiana, the National Panhellenic Council Lake Charles Chapter, City of Lake Charles, Culture Fest Louisiana, Banners, and Friends of the Calcasieu Parish Public Library. All of these partners made it possible for the series of events which we've been celebrating starting in September, and that will end in November. Like any great community read, we've selected a book. We actually have several books that we're talking about, but one primary book, and that is The Help by Catherine Stockett. In October, so we're in October, this month, we will be reading the book. Several of the library branches across the parish will have discussions where you can go and you can discuss the book with community members. So I highly encourage you to do that. We have handouts in the back whenever we're done with the program that have all of the events that will be occurring. There are events for children, teens, and adults. And the way that the program today fits into this community read is that we chose a theme. We have the book, but we chose a theme. And the theme this year for this community read is Finding Common Ground. The purpose of this series of events really was to give our community the opportunity and a place, that being the public library, to have discussions on how we as a community can build our common ground or find our common ground. So the issues of compassion, civility, those and community building, those all come into play. And the stories that Linda and the rest of the staff here at the Genealogy Library chose reflect those themes. These are stories from our community. And I think everyone here will agree with me that stories are very powerful, are they not? Words are very powerful, especially in our stories that we tell. I'm going to read a passage from The Help. Has everyone, who has read the book The Help that's here? Go ahead, fess up. Thank you. Have you seen the movie? The movie was pretty close to the book. You still are missing out if you haven't read the book, though. And I have copies of the book if you want to check them out today before you leave. But this is a passage from the book, The Help, and I think it speaks to why or how words can be very important. A moment, a very small moment, a very small conversation between two people can have a very profound impact for the rest of your life. And here's a good example of that. This is the main character, one of the main characters from The Help. The first time I was ever called ugly, I was 13. It was a rich friend of my brother Carlton's over to shoot guns in the field. "Why you crying, girl?" Constantine asked me in the kitchen. I told her what the boy had called me, tears streaming down my face. "Well, is you?" I blinked, paused my crying. "Is I what?" "Now you look at here, Eugenia," because Constantine was the only one who'd occasionally follow Mama's rule. "Ugly live up on the inside. Ugly be a hurtful, mean person. Is you one of them peoples?" I don't know. I don't think so," I sobbed. Constantine sat down next to me at the kitchen table. I heard the cracking of her swollen joints. She pressed her thumb hard in the palm of my hand, something we both knew meant listen. Listen to me. "Every morning until you dead in the ground, you gonna have to make this decision." Constantine was so close I could see the blackness of her gums. "You gonna have to ask yourself, am I gonna believe what them fools say about me today?" She kept her thumb pressed hard in my hand. I nodded that I understood. I was just smart enough to realize she meant white people. And even though I still felt miserable and knew that I was most likely ugly, it was the first time she ever talked to me like I was something besides my mother's white child. All my life, I'd been told what to believe about politics, coloreds, being a girl. But with Constantine's thumb pressed in my hand, I realized I actually had a choice in what I could believe. A simple conversation, and definitely had a profound impact on that young woman. Very empowering. So words are powerful, and that's what we're here to celebrate this morning. And hopefully, and I know everyone in here and everyone with the Calcasieu Parish Public Library System hopes that those of you who attend the programs, or those of you who see us on TV, that you will read these stories that we've highlighted during the community read. You will have conversations either at the library or with your family, with your coworkers, with your friends, and we will all work together to build a better community. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you. Our first reader is going to be Brandon Shoemaker, and he's going to read the entry "Envy, the Fabric of Our Lives" by Lynn LeBove, who entered that in the 1997 contest.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This story is entitled "Envy, the Fabric of Our Lives" by Lynn LeBove. My grandmother, Envy Elizabeth Rutherford, was the third child of James William Lindsay and Whit Nichols. Much to her shame, it states on her birth certificate that the first child was not paid for yet. They were quite poor, but well loved, she said. My grandmother worked at Avondale Mills Fabric Mill for most of her life. During World War II, she was a certified welder and inspector at a shipyard in California. She returned to Alabama after the war and raised 5 children alone through some tough times. It did not stop her. She bought her own home and retired from the mill. I spent my 17th summer, 1967, with her going to summer school. She showed me how to cut and sew, even took me to see Gone with the Wind. She had respect for young people. We rode a bus to save 2 cents a skein on embroidery thread from one side of Birmingham to the other and back. We were hanging clothes one day, and she acquainted herself with her new neighbor, a young girl with 3 small children and one very much on the way. As we went inside, she said, "We're going to give her a baby shower." Grandmother talked with all of her neighbors, and they would make the cakes and all the trimmings. Someone would get a hold of her people and invite them, telling them that it would be a surprise. That night, Grandmother took out an old paper bag pattern tied with ribbon. As she untied it, she told me how, when she was expecting her first child, Mary Elizabeth died in infancy. She had made an entire layette from this pattern. We made blankets, diaper shirts, and little gowns, complete with embroidery, all for this stranger. The day came and the girl's husband took her off. We decorated and set up. She was so surprised and cried, you could tell she'd never had a party in her life. We were cleaning up and I told my grandmother that the girl was really shocked that people could be so nice. Grandmother shook her head and said, "I got a lot more from the giving." Now I know she was wrong. I did. Guess that's why I miss her so much. We also made a baby quilt for my hopeless chest. I could never forget that wonderful summer. She never met a stranger, talked your ears off, and knew everything you'd want to know about Peyton Place, General Hospital, Lawrence Welk, and a lot of other actors. She was quite the romantic at heart and always believed in romance. She read novels all the time. She said she'd rather get her romance there than depend on a man because her luck had not been good. Grandmother moved to Louisiana to be near us her last years. Moving was hard for her. She said, "I spent all my time a-hunting my things." We brought Grandmother home to her beloved Alabama after her death, buried her next to her sister, Gladys Lindsay Attaway, at Bold Springs Church outside Birmingham overlooking the lake. There is a stone on her grave saying, "She never met a stranger." There were a lot of strangers there that day, people that told us how she'd helped them by some means or another. One thing she told me, live your life your way because you will be the one held accountable for it, not anyone else. Telling me this, she had a glint in her eye that I will never forget. The end.
Armagine DeCluet will read our next entry, My Brother by Mary LeBlanc, and she had entered that in the 1994 contest.
Good morning, everybody. This story is a former employee's mother wrote this story. The employee's name is Jeannie Fort, and this was her mother's story entitled My Brother by her mother, Mary LeBlanc. When we were kids, we lived in a small town in western Kansas. I had a brother 2 years younger than I. Then there was me and my older brother, who was 1 year older than I was. We didn't have many toys back in 1930, and they were mostly received at Christmas. So as you can see, most of our fun and games were homemade, and games were just thought up. My brother was a polio victim and was paralyzed in both legs. We kids had to play with him sometime every day. What he could play was limited. We could all play card games, but our favorite was beanbag. My mother made us all beanbags. We each had one of different materials. As far as the game, we three all had to be on our backs on the floor, since our brother couldn't do anything but lie flat on his back. We couldn't do anything else either. We weren't allowed to do anything that he couldn't do. We took one bean bag and would throw it across to one another between the two of us who were on the outside. The kid in the middle had to try and catch it as we passed it back and forth. We weren't allowed to throw any higher than arm reach above the kid in the middle. If he caught it, we all rotated. We were very possessive of our bean bags, and we played with them at all times. My brother had many operations when he was small. The doctor would take slivers of bone from his skinny little legs and graft them to his crooked backbone to help his back straighten up and strengthen it. He went through such sufferings and many stays in the hospital, weeks and months at a time. He was patient and uncomplaining. He often was in a body cast from his armpits to his hips. Being immobilized so much, he developed a love for books that lasted his lifetime. Being the oldest, the next oldest, as I went to school, I was required when I returned home to bring home my lessons from the day and try to teach him what we had learned. I say try, for we always argued. I tried to make him do the lessons just as my teacher taught us to do them. He was very intelligent and often would see a shortcut or even a solution without working it out with any kind of method. He answered, "Why, if I already knew the answer?" We never did settle that argument. He was a very good storyteller. Us kids thought he made up the best story at night in the dark when we were all in bed. Raymond, my brother, never went to school a day in his life. At the age when he should have finished high school, he was tested as to his learning level. He was a college level in all studies. On some subjects, he was equal to 2 to 3 years of college. I always claimed some of the credit, which he absolutely denied, of course, but I knew it was because of his reading, and for he read widely and on many different subjects. One day when he was about 10 years old, he was out on the sidewalk using his crutches. I should really say trying to walk using crutches. The doctor wanted him to practice. He hated the crutches because he had to wear leg braces that reached from the foot to the hip. They were locked at the knee so they wouldn't bend. Thus, he had to walk stiff-legged, swinging his legs as he walked. That day, Mother, checking on him every few minutes, noticed he was standing in a certain place. Every time she looked, he was still in that same spot. She became curious, so she went outside to find out why he hadn't moved. He saw her coming and said, "I've been waiting for you." And he had spotted a quarter on the sidewalk. And as he was unable to reach down and pick it up, he simply stepped on it. He didn't want any other kid getting that quarter, since there were many other kids playing outside. He knew his mother was watching out for him, and soon she would come and check up on him. All he had to do was stand there, and the quarter was his. Back in the 1930s, a quarter was big money. Visitors came to our house often, slipped him coins as they left. The rest of us kids never had money, but he always did. He always was willing to loan us money, brother or sister, but we had to pay interest when we paid it back. His legs were crippled, but nothing was wrong with his brain. So if we wanted to borrow money, we had to pay interest.
I'm Linda Gill, and the story I'm going to read is Remembering by Glenda Sarvant Sylvia. My mother had a room and board house on Lawrence Street in the 1920s and 30s. There was no shortage of tenants there. The J.A. Bell lumber mill was about 2 blocks from there, and a lot of the men working there were from out of town and had to rent rooms and get their meals. There was good home cooking at my mom's. My father worked at the mill for some time. Every day my mother would have a hot lunch for him, and it was my duty to carry it to him. I walked down Lawrence Street to the end, then around the little cemetery by the lake and on a little path to the mill. Although we lived so close to the lake, we were never allowed to go there, so we never learned to swim. It's kind of strange that I was allowed to go that close to the lake by myself, but the lunch had to be delivered. I also carried lunches for the men who roomed at our house and worked at the mill. During the Depression years, there were so many men without work who were traveling through hoboing that they had to beg for food. My mother didn't want anyone to go hungry, so when they knocked on her door, she always fed them a good meal. Because of this, her house was marked in some way as being a house where you could get a meal. She had to feed someone every day. My brother was given a parrot that had belonged to a man that worked on a ship in Galveston, Texas. The parrot could talk, but you can imagine some of the words that he had learned from sailors. We had to teach him all over again. He was a wonderful pet. All of the roomers petted him and fed him bread soaked in coffee, but there was one roomer he didn't like. This man would say, "Polly, want a cracker?" And the parrot didn't like that and would use a few naughty words and try to bite him. We would have to rescue the man from the bird, but to us, he was our pet. At times, though, he would tell on one of us if we did something wrong. He would holler, "Mama, Mama," and we would be punished for the deed. We lost Polly one day when he apparently ate a poison worm from the mulberry tree in our backyard. We had a funeral for him. I and my sisters and brother attended Second Ward School on Moss Street. We walked to school along Lawrence Street. The knee-high bottling works was on our route. We could stop by there on our way home after school, and they would give us shorts to drink. It could be chocolate, orange, or grape. I suppose these were bottles that didn't quite fill properly, so the name shorts. It was a nice treat for us after a hot day at school. When we finished the 5th grade at Second Ward, we had to go to Central for the 6th and 7th grades. Then it was on to Lake Charles High School for the 8th through 11th grades. There was no 12th grade at that time. We still had to walk to school as there were no school buses in the city at that time. When anyone contacted a contagious disease, the health department would quarantine your house. It seems as though one of us would bring home one of the diseases whenever they would be going around. Diphtheria, measles, mumps, whooping cough, scarlet fever, to name a few. We got them all. No one was allowed to leave or come into the house for the quarantine period. A red poster was put on the house to keep everyone away. Mother made most of her girls' clothes, including coats, until we were well up in age. We hardly had any store-bought things. Times were hard, and we didn't have very much, and were sick a lot, but somehow we managed. Could be that it made us stronger people for having lived through such rough times. We hope that some of these stories will give you some ideas for the reminiscent writing contest. It's open until December 31st, or actually the 29th. That will be the last day that the library's open for this year. And they can be turned in to any library, any branch, and they will send them here if that's more convenient. We hope that you'll each share some of your own stories of community, compassion, and civility. And we thank Clare for coming today, and we thank our readers. Clare, do you want to cover the group discussion? Chair it.
like to know if anybody has any stories that they want to share. You know, not everyone's comfortable writing, although we hope that everyone will write their stories. But does anybody, just maybe something that was said today that triggered a memory of a story from your past that you think maybe you learned from or was a good example of civility, community, compassion? I know we all have those stories. It's just dredging them up from many years of memory. That's usually the hard part.
I think the topic throws some people, but if you really think about it, the way the community came together after Hurricane Rita, and of course even further back after Hurricane Audrey, if we really think about it, there's a lot of examples of community cooperation and caring. And then of course there's individual things that have happened as well.
Did everyone hear that? Linda was talking about the hurricanes that we've had. I find that interesting. I mean, has anyone, I know those of us who have attended some of the community read events so far, have you noticed that a lot of the examples keep coming up and they have to deal with the hurricanes? Does anybody have maybe a hurricane story that they, times of crisis, and in Southwest Louisiana, hurricanes just seem to be that. Thank goodness we don't have really any other major crisis that occur. Hurricanes seem to be it. I mean, you know, so far, exactly, so far. Cross our fingers. We are blessed in that. But, you know, even something small. I noticed whenever, after Hurricane Rita, that I was most impressed with the businesses like Walmart and some of the ones that weren't local that you would least expect to have a buy-in with the community, how much they responded after the hurricane was over. You know, they didn't need to do that. They didn't do that for profit. That was just good stewardship. And I know everybody else has examples of that they experienced after the hurricanes. Does anybody want to share that?
You know, after Audrey, a lot of the community people would go down to try to help find survivors. They'd work together. They'd go all down into the areas to try to find survivors and even bodies. And it was amazing how they would work together and get out in these remote areas, and you never knew where they were. They didn't either for a while, you know. And it was just really touching.
And that had to have been hard work because these were friends and family members that they were finding.
My mother and I went to Cameron a year later, and there were still coffins on the side of the road in the fields. The destruction was just so massive.
Yeah. That must have really been a profound memory because my mother told me stories about growing up in Audrey, and I don't remember any other stories she told me about it except that she remembered her dad telling her going down to Cameron Beach and having to help pick up the bodies and how horrible that was. And he was a World War II vet, and he said what he saw on the beaches of Cameron affected him more than what he saw when he was at war. And I think it stuck out in my mind because that's the experience that he developed a profound hatred for rats and nutria-rats because they were out. Mm-hmm. And I've never liked nutria-rats since because of that. But it's interesting to hear that people came together.
For the 50th anniversary, Noah May put a book together, and there's a lot of stories of, in fact, everybody who was in that parish, she'd tell where they were and what happened and all of those. And I got the book and I told my mother, I says, I'm going to read this once and put it away. It was so depressing. Parents that had more than 1, 2 or 3 children They'd have relatives hold on to their children, they'd try to hold on to one, and the water was so forceful. It would just open their arms and they'd lose their children. They just couldn't even hold on to them.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I'm proud to be from this area because after every major hurricane that we've had, you don't, and I'm not going to put New Orleans on the, well, I am. I'm putting New Orleans on the spot, but I don't mean to pick at them. It's a different situation in Katrina. But after every hurricane in this area, it's one, you hear wonderful stories afterwards. You hear devastating stories like you were just sharing, but you don't hear stories of people just leaving their neighbors. They're helping them. Mm-hmm.
They pull together, they work together, they help each one out. And we in this area do the same thing when things happen and come up.
Right. I agree. I think we've always understood that we can only survive if we hang in together. Right. Right. Yeah.
I think this reminiscent writing is a challenge for a lot. My speaking to just a few who are writing or trying to write, not really understanding. They understand compassion, and they understand some civility, and community. But to put it all together, sometimes it hits so close to home, as you heard her stating about the different hurricanes. It hits so close to home, they would prefer not to put it, on paper.
Right.
But, and I realize that we're encouraging, though, because it's a legacy to leave, read a book. Everything is not on the internet, and I think that's my drive right there. That's one of my pet peeves. Yes, even though we teach it,
Yeah.
everything is not there. At some point the electricity goes on, you will have to pick up a book.
Right.
You have to pick up a book, and I think this is one of the reminiscence writings that's going to be a little bit more closer to heart for writing, and we just want to encourage everybody to do so.
I agree.
I think that all three of the stories that were read indicate too that one person can make a difference, because all three of the stories, Brandon's story with the grandmother and her story about the woman and her brother, and then mine where the woman was helping the hobos. Whether it's your family, a neighbor, or a stranger, that's compassion. You're showing civility as well as compassion to reach out to others and to help them.
Yeah. And it's usually the smallest moments that I find stick with us. It might be hard to remember the details of that moment, but I think that some sense of it sticks with us. And I know personally what I'm hoping to see from the stories. Especially whenever we talk about the help, when the help discussions start coming up, I am of the generation that did not experience what those of the generation of the help did. I definitely remember hearing about it from my mother, but I didn't experience it. And so when I hear stories of what it was like to grow up in Lake Charles or Calcasieu Parish in the 1950s, that's not the Calcasieu Parish that I grew up in. But even growing up when I did, some of the same issues still existed, and they still exist. So I hope that the stories that are told, I hope that they don't hide those issues. We know that we don't always show compassion. We know that there are extremely uncivil moments. All you have to do is get on the road and drive sometimes and see it. The effort of this program and the reminiscent writing series is not to ignore that those exist. It's to focus on when we are better than that and give us all something to work towards. So, you know, you're talking about the Hurricane Audrey story. That's a painful memory, and it definitely does bring up some negative thoughts. But the focus was still on what? The fact that the community came together in a time of need. And that's the power of these stories.
9/11,
Yes, that's right.
the country just molded together.
Yeah.
Our hearts were with those people.
Yeah, when we could have
And
been
those who
more
had
responsible.
suffered the losses,
Yeah.
tragic losses.
Yeah.
Also, on my part, my thing I would like to see also is that people will learn to write even if it's in small pieces.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be a book, doesn't have to be a 3-page, 4-page, and sometimes it helps. Putting a date on the moment, writing that little story, and having it.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked the first story that was read, I think. I couldn't tell what time period it was until they mentioned, there's just one little sentence in there that mentioned the TV shows. And, ooh, you got your place, your time, you know. That was so cute and really precious. Yeah, the Reminiscent Writing series is great too because you're not being graded.
That's right.
How, you know, you're not being edited by a publisher who's telling you this is not good enough. This is just true heartfelt stories. Nobody's judging. Everybody just wants to hear stories, and it's
And we
great
keep all those,
opportunity.
we might say. From the first one was written in 1990. So we have all the stories in book form from 1990. And sometimes some may just want to come by and read some of the stories.
Yeah, look, I want to make note of that here. If people want to read the Reminiscent Writing series,
Yes.
they just come to the
They're
genealogy.
available only in the genealogy branch.
Okay, yeah, the genealogy branches is where this event is happening on Pujo Street. And they just ask, anyone can just ask staff for the Reminiscent Writings. Okay. Every story, yeah.
Every entrant receives a little booklet
Mhm.
with every entry of that year, but they're not published for anyone else. One copy is made for the library, and then each entrant does get a copy.
Okay. So they'll get the stories from everyone that entered in that year.
That's right.
Okay. Excellent.
And
Yeah.
anyone can enter.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about the Reminiscent Writing Contest or about the community read in general? Well, I know for sure, let me make sure. Even if you haven't read the book, I know that today, the Fontenot Memorial Library in Vinton and the Moss Bluff Library, oh, nope, the Moss Bluff Library is a children's event today at 4 o'clock. They're going to be discussing Charlotte's Web, and that's for, I believe, third through fifth graders. So if you have any children or grandchildren, you could bring them to the Moss Bluff Library today at 4. In Vinton, today at 4 is when they'll be discussing the help. That's an adult program. That's just one of many. You know, if you don't want to drive out to Vinton, you've got other opportunities to discuss the help, and those are in this brochure if you want to look at that. There's also some other different, there's some movie programs. Central Library will be hosting a service fair on Saturday, October 13th. That's just an opportunity for those of us who want to give back to our community and get involved. There will be different community organizations who need volunteers. They will be there to answer questions. You can go and shop for volunteer opportunities, basically. We tried to make it easy for you. Movies, different events for children, Carnegie Library, which is right here next to us, will be having a movie program November 8th. And they show the film and then they discuss the film. Culture Fest Louisiana is not an event that is hosted by the library system. It's actually sponsored by a group called Common Ground. And they work with the city of Lake Charles to put on the event. Last year was their first event. This year they're going to do it again. It's at the Civic Center. That's on October 27th. That's an all-day event for all ages, and they they do a fabulous job of celebrating the different cultures in our area. And that's the whole purpose of this event, is to celebrate who we are, how diverse we are, and it's really fun. They have food. The Louisiana area is going to have a Café du Monde, so I'm there just for that reason. Beignets and coffee, I'll be there. There will be live music. There will be authors, artists. Yeah. You're probably going to be next to the Café du Monde, huh? Awesome. So there's a lot going on in October besides football. So, yeah.
And a little bit further on the announcements of upcoming events. Like she said, on October 27th at the Culture Fest, there will be a table. Genealogy branch will have a table set up representing the German culture. We had a German Heritage Day a few years ago, and when Judy Davidson was asked if we would sponsor a German table, it just worked out well. Also on Wednesday, October 25th, there's going to be a LPB is bringing in a video of the Louisiana Bicentennial of Statehood documentary, and they will show it, and then LPB has a panel which will be discussing the bicentennial of Louisiana statehood. So even though that is an added attraction, we are really looking forward to it because everything LPB does is top-notch. That will be Wednesday, October 25th, from 10 until 12, if I'm not mistaken. Also for November, our Tidbits of History is going to be Dr. Ray Miles, and he will be speaking about the part that the Indians played in the War of 1812, their role, what their perspective was in assisting. And he is a professor of history at McNeese. His specialty is the American Indians, or the American Indians. So we know that that's going to be a very interesting program as well. And again, it will not be on the first Tuesday, that will be the first Wednesday of November. And then there will be no Tidbits program for December. We'll start back up in January. Is there anything that I left out? Okay. Does anyone else have any announcements? Okay, well, we thank y'all for coming. We thank Claire especially for coming and sharing with us.